Finally, let's skip forward over half a century later. This brings us to an indie film by the name of Scotland, PA. Scotland, PA is a film that recontextualizes the events of Macbeth to a 1970s setting and sets it at a McDonald's-like restaurant. The film is actually a comedy and implores comedic uses of violence. For example, the King Duncan analog, a manager of the restaurant, is killed by being tossed into a French fry fryer, which is a particularly brutal death, if you ask me. However, the film plays it off like it's comedic. Now, comedic violence is nothing new in media. For example, Tom and Jerry or Looney Tunes both implore such violent techniques, although usually for more cartoony and less gory effects. Now, is this comedic violence a sense of desensitization to violence? One of the common complaints of modern media and a modern media audience is how desensitized we've become to violence. For example, in the wake of the Columbine shooting, Senator Joseph Lieberman, who would eventually unsuccessfully run as vice president under Al Gore, remarked as such. When talking about the film Idle Hands, a stoner comedy / horror film, he remarks of how desensitized violent society has become that we could laugh at such violent incidents, especially in the wake of the Columbine shooting, a school shooting massacre that I will not go into too heavily the details of. This kind of brings me to my final point, and that is, how can we look at these productions of Macbeth, and does it hold that we have become desensitized to violence? Well, looking at these three productions of Macbeth, I would say that humanity has always been violent. It is in our nature to be violent. However, that does not mean we should indulge in violent actions. And I do believe that society and media has desensitized us to this violence. Let's compare this to, say, sex. Sex is still a very taboo topic. It's still not depicted often in media. In fact, it's oftentimes demonized almost. Compare this with violence, where violence is so common. We'll show a diminished and cartoony form to our kids. This is the state of Macbeth, I feel. This is the history of violence and how we can use Macbeth to explore that history of violence.